Welcome everybody to the Invest Hong Kong webinar on motivating your team during uncertain times. We are very fortunate to have Mr. Eric Stratton, Managing Director of Global Institute for Tomorrow, to be our speaker today. Since 2008, Eric has facilitated leadership programs and workshops in 15 countries for the likes of BASF, FedEx, HSBC, and MasterCard. Eric is well versed in introducing new ideas on governance, business, and sustainability, as well as coaching participants to think critically about their leaders. Before joining GIFT, Eric spent several years managing multi-stakeholder partnership between global brands, companies, and civil society groups in the United States and China. Eric writes and speaks regularly on topics related to the changing role of business in society. Today, Eric will share with us the key to unlocking your team's potential using positive intervention derived from GIFT proprietary PRISM tool. He will also share some practical techniques on how to run effective, outcome-driven meetings, essential to keeping morale high. Should you have any question during the presentation, please use the chat function on Zoom or raise your hand. Without further ado, may I pass to Eric now? Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, David, and thank you to Invest Hong Kong for having me on and inviting some thoughts from our Global Institute for Tomorrow. As David said, I am originally from the United States. I have been in Hong Kong for nearly 15 years and very fortunate to have the opportunity to work with the Global Institute for Tomorrow for the last 12 years, including with many of our friends here at Invest Hong Kong, as well as other departments of the Hong Kong government and many Hong Kong companies. So today I will share with you two of our proprietary tools that we have developed at the Global Institute for Tomorrow for, as David said, helping to lead and sustain high performance amongst your team, and also how to run effective outcome-driven meetings, which is an essential skill whether you're working offline, as we all used to, or online, as many of us are now used to doing. So I have a short presentation that I will go through that I hope you will all find very stimulating. Please ask questions. You can digitally raise your hand or you can save your questions till the end. We'll save about 15 minutes for questions at the end. And I will try to also make this very relevant for the virtual space that we all occupy. So I'm very happy to sort of virtually meet all of you in different parts of the world, and looking forward to kind of hearing from you wherever you are in the world. So let's go ahead and get started into this presentation that we're calling Motivating Your Team During Uncertain Times. So just a very quick background on us. You see the world. We're the Global Institute for Tomorrow. We were born here in Hong Kong in 2004 as a Hong Kong limited company. We're completely independent, and we do not take funding from any association or groups. We offer executive education in open enrollment and customized formats, and that's essentially a fee-for-service program that we offer, which allows us to be independent. As of 3 years ago, we launched our GIFT ASEAN office in Kuala Lumpur. That office has been growing rapidly in the very dynamic region of Southeast Asia. We have worked across 15 countries, from Mongolia right through to Indonesia, India, mainland China, of course, as well as in the Middle East, in the UAE, and in Iran. In fact, we're also just currently facilitating a program for the government of Dubai, which is entirely virtual. So we've had to, of course, change and adapt very quickly. So we help companies and governments really make sense of the changes that are shaping regional markets, geopolitics, policymaking, and really the whole challenge of socioeconomic development in the very populous part of the world that you see here on the map in Asia. And we do that through promoting the mindsets and behaviors and strategies for leading in the face of 21st century challenges and constraints. So in this webinar, I don't have the opportunity to go too deeply into what that means, but suffice to say that the pandemic challenge that we are facing now is an unexpected shock for all of us. But if you really think about it, it should not be unexpected. We have known for many years that this was a high probable risk. And there are other shocks that will come related to our growing populations, our resource constraints, and really the challenge of improving quality of life in mega cities around the world. So these are some of the challenges that we address through classroom facilitation, field work projects. And again, we've had the opportunity to work with Invest Hong Kong over the years and some of the top young talent at Invest Hong Kong on our programs. So these are some of the clients that we've worked with through our experiential leadership programs, what we call outcome-driven leadership workshops, as well as sustainability advisory. And of course, the big change over the last 8 months is that while much of our work over the years has historically been in person and facilitating with people on field projects and managing groups of individuals in order to promote high performance and to come to outcomes. Everything changed in March. We had to go online with a lot of our programs. That's been a huge learning for us, which again, I will share with you. And it also has meant that we haven't left Hong Kong since March in about 8 months. So I suppose wherever you are in the world, you're having some similar experiences, how you used to work and what your business or work with governments, et cetera, used to be like has fundamentally changed as of about eight months ago. So we've been around for 16 years. We've facilitated more than 70 in-person experiential field projects in 15 countries. And that really means going out, as you can see here, this is from a smallholder palm oil plantation in Malaysia. The other photo on the right is from a cohort that we had in Laos working on a rural clean energy kind of microgrid project with the UN SCAP. And so the vast majority of work that we've done over the years has been working intensely with teams of professionals, working through challenging field projects, conceptual challenges, critical thinking, and very importantly, the behavioral challenges of collaborating across diverse backgrounds, diverse functions, cultures, industries, et cetera. And indeed, in Hong Kong, we have for 5 years run what we call a Hong Kong Young Leaders Program, which is cross-sectoral, means young professionals from business, civil servants from government, and then managers from the nonprofit sector, all working together. And then that brings up lots of very rich learning about how the problem solving and the mindset of different professionals across those sectors really is understood. So I share this with you also because this is the background to which we have developed our GIFT Leadership Toolkit. And I'm going to share 2 of those tools with you now. And so just so you know that when we talk about high performance, of course, many people have talked about high performance when it comes to things like athletics, high performance athletes, high performance chemicals, high performance machinery, race cars, et cetera. And a lot of that has been engineered in very safe, very predictable environments, you know, in a laboratory, in a business environment, in an office, et cetera. But for us, we have actually observed more than 2,000 professionals from 75 different countries working together in intensive, unfamiliar, and unpredictable environments, and how they've managed to come together and foster high performance in that setting. So that's the kind of context to which I would share with you. So the first one is what we call building and sustaining high performing teams. So please take notes. I think you can probably have this slide presentation after we're finished, but I encourage you to take notes. There's going to be some very practical tips for you that you can implement regardless of whether you work in the government, whether you work in an engineering company, or whether you work for a leading nonprofit. Regardless of your background, these tips can be put into practice for you. So this, to start us off, is the Japan Rugby World Cup. And for those rugby fans out there, this photo was taken immediately after Team Japan beat Ireland. I think going into this Rugby World Cup last year, which Japan hosted, they were kind of considered a second-rate team. Ireland was the top-seeded team going into the tournament. In their previous matchups, I think Ireland had beat Japan by an average of 50 points every time. And this is the photo taken right after Japan upset Ireland in that World Cup. They didn't go on to win the whole thing, but you can see that just to actually overcome that challenge of beating Ireland was a high performance moment and a real example of teamwork in action. So that's to start, and you can just see the enthusiasm and the joy on these players' faces. Interestingly, you'll notice many of them, or a number of them, are not ethnically Japanese, but they have quite a few non-Japanese players who've been in Japan long enough to be really key players on their team. So we have a tool that we call the Prism. And a prism, for those of you who have a background in optics or even just know what a prism is, it's this sort of crystal or glass shape that refracts light into its constituent elements. So if you see white light coming in on one end of the prism, it breaks it into a rainbow. And these colors of the rainbow we have used as a metaphor for the constituent elements of a high-performing team. And like all good corporate tools, we have an acronym called PRISM, P-R-I-S-M. So it's the Prism of high performance. So what are the key elements of high performance? So for us, P stands for positivity, and I will go through one by one what we mean and how you can practice these elements. So P for positivity. R is for respect, and in particular, respecting the ideas of all team members. The I is for inclusivity, because all good teams are inclusive and really tap into the potential of all the members. S is self-awareness, and really important to essentially understand how an individual is being perceived by the other members of the team. And M is what we call the moment. Or the leadership moment. And that is a moment that essentially ties all of the other elements together and is the moment where an action needs to be taken. So let me go through one by one what we mean by the elements of the prism and how you can use this in your own teams. I should say that we actually have a physical tool which looks like a prism, and which all of these elements are written on the different panels of the prism. This is to essentially inspire members of the team to take an action or an intervention. It anchors these principles and habits within the members of the team and is kind of a positive reminder that you can use. And I was very pleased that when we last did a little tour of the new Invest Hong Kong office here in Hong Kong, I saw a number of prisms in people's offices. And the prism has become a thing here in Invest Hong Kong. So that's wonderful to see. Because really, the whole point about this is to remind you how to intervene and to foster a high performance. And that's what this tool is all about. Okay, so here is a Japanese gentleman on one of our leadership programs. You can see that in this moment, he was running the meeting and he was full of positivity. This is actually a great photo, an example of positivity. Now, one of the key things about leadership as we describe it on our programs and in our workshops is that leadership is not reserved for the CEO, the senior management team, or somebody with a big title who commands their team based on hierarchy and authority. So we have reframed leadership as any action, large or small, that has a positive impact on moving your team forward towards its intended goal. And therefore, leadership is not a title or an authority, but leadership is actually a mindset and a way of acting where you can exercise leadership, regardless if you are the big boss, if you're in a mid-level position, or in fact, if you're an associate or a more junior member of the team, you can still exercise leadership at any time. And when you bring positivity into a team setting or project work, it actually has a very tangible effect, both on your behavior and your capabilities and that of the team. And so one of our mentors who has shared quite a lot with us about positive psychology likes to tell a story of an experiment where they have actually tested and proven that somebody who has positivity has a wider field of vision. And when they've tested people in the laboratory by giving them driving tests, those who had a positive intervention, for example, by finding money on the ground or being given a compliment before they start the experiment, they can actually see a wider field of vision, and therefore their driving performance is better. As opposed to somebody who is more negative, who is down or depressed, or who gets criticized right before they take the test. Their actually field of vision narrows, and they do much worse on the driving performance. So positivity is actually, it does have a biological effect on performance, which is proven through that experiment. So what do we mean by positivity? Well, positivity can range from something simple like complimenting teammates, saying, praising people for their performance or their attempt and their effort. It can be things like helping a colleague when they feel down or tired. Getting somebody a cup of coffee is a positive intervention. And of course, sugar. We all know that when we take a bit of sugar, it really makes us feel awake, alert, and that is also a form of positivity. If you want to establish positive behaviors in your own life and with your team, exercise is a great way to do that. Getting enough sleep, doing things like yoga, meditation, or mindfulness practice, all of these things really enhance the positivity. Humor and laughter is a great way to bring positivity. So the next time that you're in a team meeting, if you want to start off, by lightening the mood and just getting people more comfortable with humor, that's a great way to bring positivity. Now, last thing I would say, it can't be all positive. In terms of high performance, you want to bring a certain level of negativity, which is critical and constructive feedback. So if somebody gives you a piece of work, you can acknowledge it, but if it's not good enough, you don't want to just be positive and gloss over the need for improvement. So that spice, we call that is the constructive feedback and the challenge that gets people to push further in terms of creating good work. And there's actually a ratio of the ideal amount of positivity to negativity, and that ratio is about 3 to 1. You need 3 positive interventions for every negative intervention because negativity tends to stay longer. Okay, so this next photo demonstrates the importance of diversity, but not just in outward appearance. So you might look at these photos and say those gentlemen on the left all kind of look the same. They're all maybe African. They're all wearing similar clothes. But you might be wrong because actually they could be from 7 different countries. They could speak 7 different languages. They could actually be, CEOs of 7 different companies, 7 different industries. So you have to, sort of challenge yourself to look beyond appearances. On the right, this is a group of youngsters from Malaysia, and they might look diverse in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicity, etc. But they might have all gone to the same school. They might all think the same. They might all have similar backgrounds. So the key message is that when we talk about diversity, we really want to talk more about diversity in thinking rather than diversity in outward appearances, color, gender, orientation, etc. Now, the R in PRISM is respect for diverse views and diverse ideas, values, and opinions. So to the extent that you can elicit diverse perspectives within your teams and then respect all of those views, you will be contributing to high performance. And if you have a rigid hierarchy where there's a kind of power distance and fear amongst teams, that really doesn't breed respect. So you want to, sort of overcome some of those barriers. Now, the I is for inclusivity. This one's really challenging, particularly if you have somebody on your team who is very good at speaking, maybe never shuts up, maybe has a big mouth, like me. So a challenge for somebody like me who likes to speak, and if you have someone on your team, is to say, hey, take a step back, quiet down, maybe don't need to talk all the time, maybe instead help to promote another member of your team who is not as comfortable speaking, maybe a bit more shy. And if you're working in English, maybe somebody who is not as comfortable speaking in English, and really ensuring that everybody on your team is engaged and given an opportunity to contribute. That is the inclusivity. You see here a photo of our Japanese friend working with Indians. Indians talking, and hard to get a word in edgewise. So they need to be more inclusive. Okay, moving on to self-awareness. So this was taken a few years ago. It is not capturing our current political moment in the United States. But these two guys actually don't seem to have much awareness of their body language, their facial expressions. But when you're working in teams, you really need to strive to be aware of how you are communicating, even non-verbally, and what messages and signals you are sending to others. Really, try to think, how do others perceive you when you're working with them? Do you come into the team meeting looking grumpy, looking tired and depressed and not in a nice mood? Or are you very tuned in to how you're acting, how you're speaking, how your body language is affecting everyone on your team? This is really important for creating high performance. And last but certainly not least is what we call the leadership moment. And the leadership moment is a very interesting phenomenon if you start to tune into it. Whenever you're working in a meeting or with colleagues on a project, there are moments when action needs to be taken. And too often those moments come and go and they pass us by and nobody does anything. It's when you can tell that the team's energy is dropping and the productivity is dropping, but you just push on and everyone's, feels it's a real fight to get through because nobody is happy to be there. That is a moment of intervention. Somebody needs to say, hey, let's take a break. Let's go for a walk around the park. Let's go get some coffee or do something to re-energize ourselves. It's a moment when somebody who is very determined to drive towards the outcome of the project maybe has the wrong idea or is driving in the wrong direction. And it's the wrong direction. You need to say something and say, hey guys, I think we're going in the wrong direction. Let's stop and reassess. That is the leadership moment. It must be taken, but very often it passes us by. So this is really learning how to intervene at the right time with the right sensitivity and the right ability to communicate so that you can capture that moment. And this gentleman here, one of our friends from Hong Kong who was on a leadership program, was just relentless in capturing that leadership moment. And anytime the team put up a half-baked idea or was doing something that he did not think was in the best interest of the team, he would call it out. He would go up and challenge it. And you can see that he took so many leadership moments in this program that some of his other colleagues were getting a little bit tired of his leadership moments. So he at times needed to have more self-awareness. But nonetheless, it was very important that he did this. Okay, so I'm just going to take another 5 or 6 minutes and show you our second tool which is in leading outcome-driven meetings. This is really, really important, and again, can be practiced in your old-fashioned in-person meetings or even in your digital meetings, your virtual meetings. So these two numbers really sum up quite a lot. There was a big kind of year-long study in the United States a couple of years ago, and the researchers interviewed, thousands of business people about the meetings that they have and the quality of the meetings. And they asked lots of questions about how they managed meetings in their companies. One of the key takeaways that they learned through this survey is that on average, individuals feel that about 34% of time spent in meetings is completely wasted. 34% of all of the time that you spend in a meeting, if you're part of this survey, and I think that's the kind of average, is non-productive. You actually would be better off taking a nap during that 34% of time. That would be more productive than sitting in a meeting. So in any given hour, what is that? Around 20 minutes or so is wasted. The cost annually of unproductive meetings where nothing gets done and people don't come to any conclusions and they felt that they wasted their time is around $37 billion estimated. But I think that's probably quite an underestimate if you actually talk to people who work in business and who join a lot of meetings. Okay, so what does this mean in practice? Well, in that survey, they found that 4 out of 10 people had admitted to sleeping during meetings. Okay, 4 out of 10. 7 out of 10 admitted to this new kind of monkey behavior that we all have of being distracted and texting someone else or attending to other work matters during the meeting. 7 out of 10 people admitted to daydreaming during meetings. So if you're giving a presentation, look around and you might find a handful of people who are daydreaming during your presentation. And last but not least, 5 out of 10 people reported to feeling emotionally upset at attending bad meetings. So bad meetings, unproductive meetings actually led to 5 out of 10 people getting irritated and having disagreements within their teams. Okay, so I share this with you essentially to say we all attend a lot of meetings. We all attend a lot of bad meetings. So how can you improve the quality of your meetings? Especially if you are the chairperson who has called and is running the meeting. And we've added this because in the virtual environment now, it is more important than ever to actually work to run good meetings. So this professor, Petriglieri, has said, it's easier being in each other's presence or in each other's absence than in the constant presence of each other's absence. So if you think about that for a minute, you will see it's really, really not nice to be with each other when everyone else is checked out or doing other things and being distracted. So this is like a modern epidemic now of distraction. Okay, so I'm going to give you just a couple of tips on how you can lead meetings with passion. And you can be like this young gentleman here who was in the Philippines, and I think this was during one of the Manny Pacquiao's fights right after he won. And so this kid is obviously got all of the characteristics of leading meetings with passion. Okay. So this again is an acronym, and every letter of the word passion is going to describe something that you can do to make sure that your meetings are really engaging, that you get a great outcome, and that all of the people that attend the meeting are engaged. And we have a kind of scorecard. So when we do this in in-person projects, we can actually give feedback to the person who's running the meeting. We can rank them against these criteria for what makes a great meeting. So the first and one of the most important elements of a great meeting is to be prepared. So know what you want to accomplish before you start the meeting. And if you called the meeting, really, you better know what you want to accomplish and why you called the meeting. Otherwise, people will find out quite quickly. So the A is for agenda. So, again, from the prepare point of view, decide how you want to use your time. decide what the most important features of your meeting are going to be, and then confirm that everybody understands your meeting objectives and how you're going to use the time before you start the meeting. So we have two S's in passion. The first S is for support. It's very useful to assign support roles amongst different members of the team or the meeting to help you meet your objectives. So this is a way of being inclusive, of bringing people in and just getting people involved in various aspects of the meeting. Somebody can be a note taker. That's a really important one. If you're facilitating the meeting, it's very difficult to capture all the notes while you're facilitating the meeting. Somebody can keep time, for example. Somebody can help and get the coffee and the refreshments and, make sure that those coffee cups never go empty. The second S is what we call synthesize. Now, this one is what we have found when we do our projects and we work with teams is one of the most challenging elements for all of the individuals who come and join our cohorts. It is the intellectually and conceptually most challenging, but it's one of the most fruitful if you can do it well. That is to kind of pause at key moments throughout the meeting and summarize what everybody is talking about, or what the different views are and what those key takeaways are. So it really helps to bring people together on the same page, particularly if you're discussing a topic that has many different aspects or many different points of view. You really want to stitch the meeting together so that by the end of the meeting, you have a sense of common understanding of what you all talked about during the meeting. So try to synthesize what's being talked about in your meeting. Here is I for inclusivity again. In fact, inclusivity, we have found, again, through observations over 15 years and working with hundreds of teams, that inclusivity is one of the areas that teams frequently fall down on. So in a meeting, you really want to keep everyone engaged. You want to seek everyone's opinion, keep the positivity levels high, and actually just look around and read people's body language. Okay, the nonverbals. You will be able to tell who is engaged in your meeting and who is not interested, who is sleeping in the back of your meeting. Okay, that doesn't make for a good meeting, so you want to keep everybody included and engaged. Now, O is the all-important outcomes. So we said this is about leading effective outcome-driven meetings, so you got to get an outcome. And when we do projects, the outcome is we have a whole series of milestones and deliverables that the teams have to work with. And you really want to run the meeting so that by the end, you get a tangible outcome by the end of the meeting that everybody can buy into and feel, yeah, we really produced something. Our time was well spent. Even if I don't agree in every 100% of that outcome, we know that we got it and we've moved a step closer towards our eventual goal. And last but not least, the N is for next steps. So when you run a meeting, you get that great outcome. One of the things that you want to be sure and do is let everyone know what are the next steps. What are the action points? Who owns those action points? And who's responsible? So set some timelines, set some agreed actions for implementation, whatever it may be. To have the next steps is really highly motivating. And if you don't do that, people can leave the meeting feeling like, well, I'm not sure really what we took away and what I'm supposed to do next. So that can also be a bit demotivating. So that's the passion tool for running effective outcome-driven meetings. I've taken, I think, just a couple minutes extra, but I had to race through a little bit. There's a lot more that we could say about both the PRISM meetings tool, the PRISM high-performing teams, as well as the passion tool for running meetings. I'd like to kind of end there and open it up for questions. So anybody in any part of the world who has a question about those, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Eric. I'm sure we all feel the enthusiasm of Eric on this topic, training and high performance. I'm particularly impressed by the survey on how many people actually fall asleep and who play on their mobile phones or daydreaming. I mean, 7 hours.
I hope that doesn't include you, David.
Yeah, not today. Yeah, but
I hope you're not chatting on WhatsApp under the desk.
Not today, but I'm sure all of us have done it. Not only 7 hours of time.
Guilty as charged.
7 out of 10 is really an understatement, I would say. But nowadays, it's especially more difficult if we have all these online Zoom meetings.
Yes.
So it comes to a question in a new normal that we now have with COVID-19 and social distancing. And a lot of teams have to work remotely and actually from home, who have lots of distractions and from different offices, from even different parts of the world. How to keep the morale high, how to keep them positively engaged and to be a positively and a good high performance team. Thank you.
So yeah, I think your question maybe is just to make a few comments about in our Zoom enabled working life, what are some strategies for keeping people engaged and positive and high performing, right?
Yes.
That's a great question. I think so. Those slides you saw and that data was taken in the old traditional form of meetings when we're all together in person. When we're behind a camera and a Zoom call, it's much easier to be distracted. It's also much easier to hide. So on our programs, we have a saying, there is no place to hide, because actually you're part of the team. Everybody takes personal ownership for helping to drive the outcome. And there's no place to hide because your teammates will find you. If you're not contributing, or if you've checked out, or if you're gone somewhere, or if you're just constantly distracted, it's very easy to see that, and there's no place to hide. Now, on Zoom calls and on virtual teamwork, by contrast, there is a lot of places to hide. The first thing you can do to hide is just to black out your screen and to mute your microphone. Then you can be doing anything. Nobody has any idea what you're doing. And when your teammates call on you, you might not even respond because you might be in the kitchen, getting a snack or dealing with your children in the background. I mean, all kinds of distractions. So it's actually much, much more challenging to foster this kind of performance in a Zoom or a virtual thing. I think the first kind of practical tip is teams need to commit to each other, right? So you really need to foster a culture of commitment, of personal ownership, and not letting people free ride on the meeting or getting away with poor behavior and letting others do the work. So that's really the first and foremost. But then, simple things like require everyone to have their cameras on. If you're in a meeting, if you're in a project, you have to have your camera on. That's part of the commitment to be there, right? And then, the communication requires different strategies. It's not as easy as being with people in person. You have to make an effort to lighten the mood by bringing something to your presentation, by asking people specifically how they're doing and what their experience is. You have to really deliberately engage people and not take it for granted that you're all together and everything works the way it used to. So there are some specific strategies, but I would say that the most important is the culture of commitment and personal ownership. And then just make sure everybody turns their cameras on and are engaged.
Okay, thank you, Eric. And thank you for all of the audience for joining our webinar today. We hope to see you soon again in our next webinar. Have a nice evening. Thank you.